Hello everyone, my name is Matt and I'm a library associate with the St. Paul Public Library. I'm very excited to talk about a couple books with you today. Now, I'm a science fiction reader and I do recognize that not a lot of people enjoy sci-fi as a genre. However, I picked out a couple great titles that have been published in the last few years that I think even non-sci-fi readers would enjoy. These books are available in print or digitally as an ebook through the St. Paul Public Library, and I hope you'll give them a look. Let's get started. The first book I'd like to discuss with you is by an author you may have heard of. Stephen King has, of course, written many great horror books, but this book right here, 11/22/63, is a sci-fi historical fiction about a Maine high school English teacher who goes back in time to stop the Kennedy assassination. Jake Epping has a friend named Al who runs a diner who has discovered a time portal in his diner. Now this time portal has some interesting rules. The first rule is that every time you go back in time, no matter what, it is always September 9th, 1958 at 11:58 a.m. It doesn't matter how long you stay in the past, as soon as you come back to the present, only 2 minutes have passed. And every time you go, you are going to reset what you did the time before. So you can go back in time, you can change things and come back, see what has changed. But if you go back in the portal, it will reset everything you did, which becomes a major source of drama because in this book, he is trying to stop the Kennedy assassination, but it's 5 years after he comes out of the time portal. So he spends lots of time just waiting. He starts to teach English under an assumed name in a high school. He falls in love and he gets pulled into some small town drama that becomes this nice little interlude in the middle of the book. The thing I really like about this book is that it is every genre of fiction, just about. It is, of course, a time travel story, so it's science fiction. It is a historical fiction because we have a man from the 20th century or 21st century living in the past. And because there's so much time and we have that small town drama in the middle, you get kind of this little provincial life that ends up being a little bit of a romance. It's also kind of a thriller and spy novel because he spends so much of his time stalking Lee Harvey Oswald in order to obtain information and try to stop the assassination before it happens. It also becomes a little bit of biography about Lee Harvey Oswald. You learn a lot more about that character than you would ever have expected. I do think the book is a little bit long. It's about 800 pages. But the thing that Stephen King does really well is writing easily digestible fiction where you can read 200 pages in one sitting and you're really thrilled the entire time. At first I didn't like the ending of this book, but the more I think about it, the more satisfied I am. I thought it was a thrilling book. I enjoyed every minute of it, and I hope that you will give it a look. The second book I'd like to discuss with you is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is book 1 of her Broken Earth trilogy, and this one is different even for sci-fi and fantasy readers. Sci-fi and fantasy tends to fall into one of 3 or so categories. You either have spaceships and lasers, or you have elves and wizards, or you have computer hackers. But this is none of those things. In this book, the Earth is broken, so there's a lot of lore in the book about how Father Earth got mad at people for the way that it's being treated, and so it begins to rebel. So there are these fifth seasons, which are basically decades-long winters where you can't grow food and much of the population dies during it. The other thing in this world is that there are people called orogenes. Orogenes can control the seismic motions of the Earth, which is of course very powerful in a world in which the Earth is broken, but they're also a subjugated class. They're hated by everybody, treated not as people, and they are controlled by the Empire, so they do the Empire's bidding. There are 3 main narratives that happen throughout this book. One is the story of Essen. Essen is a mother who is looking for her lost child and husband. She discovers at the beginning of the book that her husband has killed her son, because he discovered that the son is an orogene. He runs away with the daughter, and the mother is devastated. Essen is devastated and is leaving her community to go and try to find him and save the daughter. The second story is of Demaya. Demaya is a young Origene who has to go to the Empire's center in order to go through basic training to control her powers. Cyanite is the third character in this book, and she is a young Origene who is in training and in apprenticeship with a master Origene, and they're set out to clear a harbor for a city to keep their economy running, but things go bad, and then the story unfolds from there. This one's a little hard to get into at first because there is such a rich world that takes some time to build, but the world building is really worth it. It's a great story, and the character development is fantastic. There are many memorable characters in this book. If you do try to read this, use the glossary. The author has kindly included a glossary in the back with all of these made-up words she uses to help build the world. This book won the Hugo Award in 2016 for the best science fiction title, and then the sequel won the next year, and the third book in the trilogy won the year after that. So this is a very highly regarded trilogy that's well worth your time if it sounds interesting to you. Also, if you do end up reading and enjoying this, N.K. Jemisin does have a new book that came out recently, and it made the New York Times bestseller list a few weeks ago. It's called The City We Became. This book, I think, speaks to a lot of environmental and racial issues that have been going on in the world for a while, and it's very relevant even today. So I think it's well worth your time, and you should give it a look. Thank you very much for listening. I had a lot of fun making this video, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to it. A quick reminder that these are books that are available either in print or digitally through our ebook platforms, and I hope you enjoy. Stay safe, stay healthy, and happy reading.